For our keynote talk, we will have the Director of the Food Nutrition Research Institute, Dr. Capanzana. He has been with the DOST for 30 years, starting as Senior Research Associate. He's a chemical engineer, and he earned his PhD in food science from the University of New South Wales. So without further ado, let us please welcome Dr. Mario Capanzana.
Magandang umaga sa ating lahat. Magandang umaga. Ang topic natin ay sa wellness, and of course how our functional food will help at least maintain our wellness. Pero parang hindi tayo well. Parang walang energy. So magandang umaga po. Yan. Well, I'd like to thank the organizer and congratulate them for this very important convention, the Natural Product Group. And of course, the Food and Nutrition Research Institute is happy and welcoming you to this, to the Food and Nutrition Research Institute. I'd like to thank Dr. Renato for this partnership, and of course, I'd like to recognize our partners, Dr. Dairi and Dr. Trinidad, as part of this the plenary presentation. And of course, I'd like to also welcome our delegates on this particular event. And later today, maybe I asked Dr. Donato that we are welcome to see some of our laboratories, and that may help you us understand what is functional food. So, the topic assigned to me is on functional food. Are we responding to the research gap? But I'd like to start with a question. Do you know that? Something about FNRI. Now, of course, natin na kayo, but prior to your coming, have you heard of the FNRI? Okay, that's very good. So, do you know that Food and Nutrition Research Institute ranks third in terms of awareness among DOST agencies? This was a survey done by SWS Survey, and awareness of DOST, who's the first? Pag-asa. So, katatapos lang po nila at marami po silang mga press releases. So, naturally, sila po yung leading among the awareness of UST. Who's the second? Sa B-box po. Kasi tayo ay being updated on our buildings. And yung big one ay ating parating nakikinig. And of course, the Food and Nutrition Research Institute. So this is done by SWS Survey in 2017, and still among 1,200 participants distributed among Metro Manila, Balas, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. So in detail, we see that between 2015 and 2017, we are happy that our awareness increased a bit from 2015. And now, you know that what is FNRI, and we hope that in the next survey, will put us number 1. Sige po. Second ang pag-asa. Well, to know more about FNRI, when you arrive here, you notice a garden. Nakita po ba ninyo? So, among agencies and the department and even government agency, seldom you will see a garden that welcomes you. This is because of our research findings that there's a decreased consumption of vegetables that lead to certain micronutrient deficiency and, of course, a type of malnutrition. So we thought that we need to demonstrate the importance of consumption of vegetables, which may be considered, in a way, a functional food. So, by mandate, we are tasked to conduct the National Nutrition Survey, where we look at the prevalence of malnutrition in the country. who are stunted, who among the population nationwide are hypertensive, may mga diabetes, and many more diet-related disorders. The second mandate that we are supposed to do is to come up with research and development that will respond to the nutritional problem, particularly on the malnutrition and micronutrient deficiency, and of course, the increasing problem of non-communicable diseases. So we do this through a policy recommendation, we do this through an intervention study, and many more that we hope that will be used by our stakeholders, which is part of our third mandate, to disseminate the research that we are conducting, our findings through different platforms. And this event is one of the platforms that we hope we could communicate and convey the findings of our research. So our mission is to provide accurate information and innovative technologies, of course, to fight malnutrition. So what are the current health and wellness status of the country? So we call it the triple burden of malnutrition, o apat na daw po. But I focus on this, particularly the micronutrient deficiency. So the data showing here is 2013-2015, and we still have problem of vitamin A deficiency. Anemia, if we look at the 2018 data that we reported recently, increased, and this is something that we need to work out. Children under age of 5 is something that is a big problem, particularly in stunting. Stunting is a chronic form of malnutrition that, if not addressed at early stage, will lead to a problem, particularly on their cognitive development and later on productivity and the rest of their life. And of course, wasting, this is yung mga payat ng mga bata, particularly those that have not been given appropriate complementary food. And of course, an overnutrition, so we have the deficiency and we have also the excesses, particularly the increasing prevalence of hypertensive individuals, diabetes, and of course, overweight and obesity. So the numbers are there, and those are things that we need to look at in the future. But if we look at the global picture, we see the non-communicable diseases is not only the problem of the developing countries like the Philippines, but also globally, and we can attribute this to the NCD's non-communicable diseases. And this causes about 71% of the world death. And of course, they noted the prevalence of this high blood pressure, smoking, physical inactivity, overweight and obesity, and of course, the prevalence of raised blood glucose or the diabetic population. So there are solutions that we have suggested through the World Health Organization, and these are various targets that we need to respond over the period of, I think this is up to 2030, aligned with our SDG. So halt the rise of diabetes and obesity and other types of intervention. Well, in the country, we have also data that reflects the same picture as shown globally, particularly the non-communicable diseases, death, which is about 6 to 8% or 70 out of 10 population in the Philippines. And we noted that about 29% is at risk of premature death from target NCDs. Now, well, you have heard recently in the news that Filipinos are malakas uminom. And 50% of the population have been shown to have a rich drinker. So medyo na-highlight kami doon in the news is because we noted that close to 50% of adults are drinkers, and this is something that we need to look at. Also, physical inactivity, again, this is more prevalent among women, and may cause the one leading risk factors for NCDs. So, like the global data, the Food and Nutrition Institute also generate information about this NCD's risk factors. So you find that it's something, this is very alarming, particularly if you see the trend on NCDs, the diabetes, most important yung diabetes. In 2018, we see significant increase in the populations, particularly 20 years and over. So it's something that we need to respond. And in this group, maybe towards a very good research area that I will be discussing later on. Elevated blood pressure. So it's usually very low percentage. Now it's something that we need about. This is about 24 out of about 75% of the population 20 years and over. So you note that this is something that is very much related to the food intake. Now, what is the cost of these particular NCDs? Last month, the WHO released this information that government healthcare expenditures in 2018 as per type of NCDs is somewhat significant. You see the CVD, cancer, chronic, endocrine, and metabolic diseases is something that government spend in terms of prevention. So those are the direct costs of NCDs in the Philippines. And the cost of premature death will, particularly CVD, is also about 342 billion pesos. So something alarming that if we can prevent this through proper diet and food intake, will reduce this much expenditure from the government. But more importantly, our personal expenditures, the burden of this type of disease. So there are strategies to prevent this, and among these are, of course, you have heard the syntax, coordination, planning, etc. What may be related to us in terms of the product content, particularly the content of sodium and trans fats, and many others. So I think those are areas for research that calls for our scientific community to respond. So as DOST, we have responded to prevent control of NCDs, and this is included in our harmonized national R&D agenda. And we know that under health, one of the areas is on functional food. And this is also stipulated in research priorities for health technology development under the Philippine Council for Health Research and Development. Among others, we have the functional food as an area for our research. So it's also part of the RA 10532, the Philippine National Health Research System, Act of 2013, and of course the NURA, where functional food is part and parcel of this particular policy. So just to give us a background on the issue about functional food. R&D on functional food as a solution to NCDs. Well, we need to know what is really functional food. Although globally, we have different interpretation of what is functional food. But whether those are technical definition, we need to understand simply that functional foods are food or food components that provide health benefits beyond basic nutrient function. We have a big discussion on really how we will adopt what is functional food. And the technical working group on functional food, which include about our UST partners and some other private sectors, define functional food as are those containing one or more nutrients to maintain and enhance health, and may prevent risk for certain diseases or disorders beyond basic nutritional function. This includes dietary and health supplements and fortified foods for nutrition. So, but the East-West, they differ in terms of the definition. But I said that regardless of whatever definition, it's something responding to our needs for wellness. So, we have also formulated an functional food R&D framework, and simply saying that with this information that may be existing right now, like some folkloric use that some medicinal plants is good for this, good for that. Of course, we need to consider all those folkloric information. And of course, some cultural managements. What are the most commonly available in the country? So when we submit proposal, the question of the panel is usually, do we have enough supply of that particular material that will merit a commercial production? So medyo po, those are some challenges that needs to be addressed in terms of the production system. Although it may be good, but we have no enough. Simply, when we were talking about malunggay as a raw materials, when we talk about volumes that we need to produce, it looks like parang we don't have enough of that quality of malunggay leaves and variety that we need to look at. But again, that can be solved, have solution in terms of communicating among the stakeholders, particularly the growers and the farmers. So from this, we need to look at the extraction, whether it should be extracted or used as food itself, and characterize it as of the safety, biological assays, and many others. And from then, let's look at the health benefits derived from that particular materials through either in vivo or in vitro analysis. And of course, we need to look at if we need to process that, come up with a product, do the product development. We need to understand that if we process some of this and we identify some of the active component, processing procedure may affect that particular active component. So we need to look back again whether the potential claim has been altered and look at the health benefits through either several methodologies and come up with a functional food either as an ingredient or a functional food product. So this is the framework that the group thought be part of our R&D agenda. So again, recent discussion with the technical working group arrived at priority food that needs to be studied. There are reasons why they are selected, particularly, of course, the supply, the market, technology, and the uniqueness of this particular product. So, we have the local fruits, local vegetable, root crops, tubers, rice is pigmented rice. We have also studied some studies on local berries, herbs and spices, nuts, and seaweeds, and some of the edible mushrooms. So, in a nutshell, these are topics that will involve these particular priority commodities. We need to characterize the food for it and its food component. We need to assess the safety, particularly coming up with a DOST response study. Establishment of health benefits. We need to have a scientific evidence to demonstrate that it is something that helps improve or that may help decrease something like that. So this is something that we need to look at and of course come up with a product development. Now, what we are doing at the Department of Science and Technology, so this is just a simple listing and it's not very exhaustive. there are a lot of information, there are a lot of researches that we have conducted. We have enough time? Okay, so we laid out this functional food program as to its objectives. So to characterize using nutrient profiling technique, using an in vitro and in vivo studies. So we need to characterize those active components that may have been taken from the literature. And of course, come up with some of our proposal and studies. Then evaluate the safety of functional foods by assessing contaminants, toxicity if ever there's toxicity, and conduct dose response study. There are many products in the market, but before it has certain effect, you need to consume for a longer period. And how much per day is something that we need to understand also. Establish health benefits of functional food or the products through intervention. So, and biomarkers and mechanism of action of that particular active component. So, the intervention study is something that is still wanting in terms of functional food R&D. And of course, it should not remain as publication, it should not remain as product of R&D, but we need to commercialize it. So if we are proposing products or research, we should put in mind how this can be used by different users, particularly industry and the community. And then of course, it's very important that we look at the policy papers, develop policy papers and statement to be the basis of crafting standards or crafting a regulation, which may be, again, we thought that this will be part of the program. So here at FNRI, we have conducted several studies. And again, this is not an exhaustive study, but I think we are just listing some of the work that we have here. And again, this is mostly work of Dr. Trinidad this year, and some of you that will be cited here. So our favorite, do you know what is in the FNRI logo? That's malunggay. So really, that's how we subscribe to good nutrition. And in a study by Lilith, they noted the dietary fiber content of malunggay, and they conducted a fermentation study and showed that it's a propionate producing material. So somewhat high in terms of dietary fiber content. But just to caution us in terms of the malunggay, if we develop products from malunggay, like for example, the most common is the pandesal with malunggay. How much malunggay you can add to have an acceptable pandesal? Have you tried that? Pero mabili yung yung pandesal, di ba? Pag sinabing pandesal na may malunggay, maski pa 5 piso yan, ganong kaliit, bibilhin, kasi may malunggay. But how much nutrient that it has contributed? How much of that pandesal to be consumed to give you benefits in terms of course, the proportion of calcium and iron may increase, but not significant. Because adding more of the malunggay powder may result to the distortion of the taste, the textures, and so on. So another study showed that, in another study, that about 3 aming natapos mapping out the characteristics, the amount of phytochemicals, antioxidant activity, which give us information about the quantity of this quantity of phytochemicals and antioxidant activity. So again, I understand this has been published or under publications. So, well, in terms of product development, we have a number of products that has been developed from concept based on the need for that particular product for responding to certain NCDs. Of course, Yakult juice, I think here, is ready for transfer. We have shown that this is mostly on fructooligosaccharides. It's sweet, but again, may not increase your blood sugar level. Again, brown rice, we have adulterates. We have protected this already. The brown rice, the blend of carrot, pineapple, low fat, low sugar. Again, the juice and sweet potato rice. So, but as you see some of this, and maybe when we explore all the literature, there's still gaps in terms of efficacy and effectiveness on the developed functional food products. So, in order for us to have a claim, we need to have scientific evidence of those potential claims. And these are areas that we need to work on, particularly as we proceed with our program on functional food. And of course, toxicity studies. Now, I'd like to briefly, last 2 minutes, I'd like to briefly talk about nutrigenomics as a tool leading to the development of functional food or designer food. So, well, what is nutrigenomics? It's something that it is an interface between nutrition science and cellular or genetic processes. So, it is something that when we talk about genomics, nutrition genomics, it's something related to how our gene is responding to the food we eat, or how the food is affects the genetic makeup. So how food affects, here. And it is using certain genomic tools that we have, again, available. Now, it's something that how the DNA or affects food are affected by the food, and how this food modifies some of these, particularly the lipid, protein, sugars, modify or alter our genes. So simply nutrigenomics or nutrigenetics. So this slide will tell us between the two people, pag any change in terms of the sequence of the gene may alter the effect of that particular food. So here it is illustrated the fit and fat. We're having low sensitivity, but in its fat, it has sensitivity to complex carb. So again, this is some emerging science that will help us understand more of how our food affects our body, that maybe in the future we have some of the designer food. So again, we have published some of this study looking at the association of FTO genes to the body mass index, physical inactivity, and dietary index. So we have found that those consuming this, those individuals having this allele found to cause 2-fold increases of becoming obese. So these are fat mass FTO genes that may be with us, but can be altered by means of the food we eat. Time's up. So again, we have this FTO. So simply what I want to emphasize here is that maybe it's not always the food that we eat, but the gene that we have may affect the outcome, may be altered by the food we eat. So we also look at the differences in mean fat intake based on this type of genes and how it is responding to the intake. So, okay, we also look at the hypertensive and non-hypertensive adults and how this fat affects their outcome. We have also looked at those population having high salt intake and how this is modifying the genes. We also look at the satiety of individual in terms of sila ba ay malakas talagang kumain and how the genes can modify their satiety. And apparently they found that satiety responsiveness, na yung pag mabagal ba kumain, it may result to a better to obesity. This is something like yeah, I think that's the other study. Now, this is what another study that we've done. We look at the effect of malunggay leaves powder in terms of the cancer, certain type of cancer, KR genes. And they found that the study showed that the diet consisting of malunggay leaves powder consistently reduced the mutation frequency of KRAS oncogene, which is the cancer gene in rats after 11 months of intervention. It's shown that it is something that consuming malunggay leaves powder may help reduce this type of gene related to cancer. So again, this is one of the earlier studies that we have conducted. Again, we have also studied the brown rice. So, in short, there's still a lot of opportunity that we need to look at beyond the nutrition function. And we are now looking at the biological study, looking at the genetic effect of the food to the genetic makeup of the population that may lead to a what we call designer food or the functional food. We also look at that in the future, when you go to McDonald's or you go to KFC, instead in your credit card, you will be giving a card containing your gene that will prescribe the food that you need to eat in a restaurant. So something that we hope that in the next 5 to 10 years, having the data on the genetic data on DNA profile of the population, we can come up with an algorithm that will prescribe the food an individual will take. The card that you will have your DNA profile, such that later on you will come up with the precise food that will not help you become fat, increase your blood sugar, because your DNA tells what your food you need to work on. And maybe we can look at culinary medicine, something that is not popular in the Philippines, but again, food is what we need to have in terms of certain diseases. And of course, what we think at FNRI, the garden that we see outside, we will cluster it. We will have a plot. Yung plot doon na this food is good for hypertensive individual. Because food planted on our garden is high dietary fiber, or it contains phytonutrients. So you put something that we need to look at. So issues of functional food, we see that there's continuing increasing prevalence of NCDs. We need to come up with policies, particularly on the claim. These are missing. Knowledge on the health benefits of functional food. We need still to look at the benefits. Of course, we need partners. University of Santo Tomas, FNRI, and all other academic institutions should look at this particular study. And underutilized research findings on functional food. Some other universities or RDIs may have a very good research output, but we need to utilize it into something that can benefit the population. Innovation on local sources of functional food, I think, is something that we need to do. So we need to come up with this particular event such that we can exchange information and come up with a list of functional food studies and more proposals from our partners. So way forward. So currently, the Philippine Council for Health Research calls for proposal on these areas: malunggay, turmeric, seaweeds, BCO, and think Dr. David is here, the pilina, local berries, edible mushroom. And we need to look at this, address the gaps that I mentioned earlier. So, opportunities, it's a good investment. Again, with the number of hypertensive individual, diabetic individual, we don't want them to increase, but they are potential market. So, it's about $275.7 billion. So, maraming nagne-negosyo kasi magaling ito, this is best for this, good for this, sabi ni Kumare. Pero, tanungin natin si Kumare. Then, adoption of technology. So, maraming pong salamat.